But interestingly, when I come across the term brain drain, two words really stick to me: displacement and privilege. A lot of people are displaced. People tend to sell their land and use all of the savings that they have to immigrate to places like Canada, Australia, or the US for education and career prospects. Privilege is something that I also identify with brain drain. Is I see folks that travel to study at institutes that are really expensive.
Hello and welcome to Dispersion. Dispersion is a podcast by the Zoryan Institute that analyzes and celebrates both the diverse and common experiences of diasporas living away from their homeland. I'm your host, Jen. In this episode, we explore the push and pull factors of emigration and the notion of brain drain. To guide us in their discussion through their lived experience, I'm joined today by two diasporan Canadians, Azadeh and Ifrah. So Azadeh is the CEO and co-founder of VitalTracer, a medical startup that designs smart wearable medical devices. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Ottawa, obtaining her MSc from the same university in biomedical engineering. In the last 12 years, her main field of research has been designing and developing medical devices, particularly vital signs monitoring ones, and applying AI to biosignals. She is one of the top 25 Women of Influence recipients of 2021. Student Entrepreneur National Champion in 2021, a Canadian G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance, a skilled leader, entrepreneur, business planner, and a successful project manager. So welcome, Azadeh. Thank you. And our second guest today, Ifrah, currently works as a senior policy and program advisor at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Her previous experience consists as a program officer for the Canada Border Service Agency, a research analyst for the University of Waterloo, as well as a junior research fellow for the European Institute of Policy, Research, and Human Rights. Ifrah graduated from the University of Waterloo with a Bachelor's of Honors Political Science with a business specialization and a minor in Economics and International Trade, as well as a diploma in Sustainability Studies. So thank you both so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, and in particular, your lived experience, your anecdotes, and how they relate to the topic of diaspora and what it means to be part of a diaspora. So thank you both. By way of an introduction, I would love to hear from you both, in your experience, some of the factors or circumstances that led to your decision to leave what we typically refer to on Dispersion as your home country in pursuit of opportunities in your host country, which would be Canada. So Azadeh, I'm going to start with you. If you want to give us a little bit of a picture of what that journey looked like and what some of the major considerations you made in that.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today. My story is that I originally born in Iran, raised in United Arab Emirates, which is Dubai, and then in Canada. So it's like almost 20 years in Dubai, 20 years in Canada, and I have a really hard time to tell and define for myself where is home. So I was like Iranian, Dubai, Canada. It's like I was one of those people who really don't feel like I feel everywhere is home, and that's totally fine. And I never ever in my life feel as an immigrant person or a strange place at all. But in general, the reason that I moved from Dubai to Canada because I got married, and my husband studied his master at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario. That's why we both moved to Canada, and we start our life together in London, Ontario, and for 2 years, I believe. Then we moved to Ottawa for 10 years and then moved to Montreal for the rest.
So you've had a little bit of a tour in terms of some of Canada's major cities, and something that you said in the beginning, because I think I really relate to it, but it's something we've also talked a lot about on Dispersion, is the concept of home. Now, we use home in Dispersion as typically kind of your country of origin, but actually, Azadeh, I think you've brought up a good point that it has its own interpretations dependent on your own journey. So I wanted to highlight that because I too have moved, been an immigrant, and have felt that, home question mark piece a lot as well. Ifrah, for you, how has your journey had similarities? How has it had differences? And what were some of those major push and pull factors, if we want to use that phrase, that led you to where you are today in this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. And I would say that my experience is slightly similar to Azaeda's, given the sense that I also spent about 12 years or so in Abu Dhabi in UAE. So, but I was born in Pakistan and then immigrated with my parents to Canada at a very early age. My father immigrated to Canada on a study permit, so being able to sort of work in the immigration sector and then tying that together, it really brings a lot of similarities and based on my own experience as well as my family. So we spent like a few years in Ottawa, starting like in 2000 to 2005, and then 2 years or so in Kitchener-Waterloo. We then moved to the UAE, and I think really that motivating factor for my family was given the cultural aspects, similarity in terms of the religion, so a lot to do with culture, religion, proximity to the home country. It's an hour away from Pakistan, so it was really convenient to visit other family relatives, such as my grandparents, over the last couple of years. So really we've spent like a good number of years over there in Abu Dhabi. After that, once I graduated, I moved back to Canada for educational opportunities as well as my career. So I think a lot of the pull factors there has been education, getting to have a wider perspective and being able to delve into the different opportunities available in Canada. So that's really been a major pull factor for me. And at the moment, I think right now it's Canada, but who knows, maybe in the future might move back and or another place. It really depends on the opportunities. But I want to point out as well, for me, belonging to these places, it really depends on how my experience has been so far, as well as sometimes I consider myself as a global citizen. The different, political aspects in each region, as well as how I interpret that membership to that community. So it's hard to say where I'm from, and I really struggle with that question when someone asks, "Where are you from?" Well, I'm born in Pakistan, but I grew up in the UAE, in which citizenship is deprived. So I can't really say I'm a UAE national, but I am a Canadian national, so it's a complex way of defining that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. And it's one, again, something we've talked a lot about on episodes previously, this idea of global citizenship and what it means and how one person can balance different memberships, different senses of belongings across communities. And sometimes that even means, having maybe never been an immigrant, you're in your country of origin or birth, as we would call it, but because of your kind of ancestry, you're part of so many different communities. And I think it's such a fascinating thing to study and to explore on how each person relates to different cultures and different spaces that we find ourselves in. And I'm so excited we have so many similarities between the two of you, because I think there's going to be some really interesting points of reflection throughout today's episode. And education obviously is the theme that's bringing this all together. Has played a significant role for both of you, and I understand continues to. So I think we'll probably play around with that theme a lot. So that kind of influences my first question, and I want to dig in a little bit more to this understanding of why Canada, in terms of the professional and academic experiences that you hoped that it would bring or that it would afford you, and how much that influenced your decision. We're going to talk about brain drain a little bit later in today's episode, so I want to kind of set the foundation here by talking about what Canada offers and why people choose to come to Canada. Ifrah, I think we'll start with you. Give us a little bit more. You just mentioned that one of the bigger pull factors to come back to Canada after your few years here earlier in your life was education and profession. So tell us a little bit about that and what that has meant for you.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for in terms of education, that's been a really large part of so far what I've accomplished. Having the opportunity to study at the University of Waterloo really opened a lot of doors for me. Being a university at a center with its mandate on international education was really eye-opening in the sense that I was able to meet other folks that were from similar backgrounds, students that have actually come from the UAE as well. So there was a little nice mixer there, being able to connect with the individuals traveling to the UAE, to Canada specifically for higher education. I would also say that Canada is known for its multicultural diversity. So that really speaks volumes in terms of what pulled me and how it shaped me today. And I would also say, based on my previous two, I would say locations, Pakistan does not have much of the opportunities that I would like as compared to Canada, comparatively. I studied in the subjects of political science and then went on for a master's in migration and diaspora studies. So it is very specific and narrow. Having to find that field in certain places or universities can be challenging. So I think a lot has to do with what the universities in Canada offer, their diverse programs, the different sort of elements, such as the co-op program, was also something that was really interesting that I read while I was in the UAE in high school. And I wanted to also point out that living in the UAE as a Canadian national, it just made more sense for me to go to Canada to study as a domestic student. So a lot had to do as well with financial reasons as well.
Ifrah, you raise a really interesting point about kind of the orientation of Canadian programs. I did a history degree with a specialization in social conflict and genocide and political science, and I know that there were a lot of programs at the time coming out that are orientated towards international politics, international studies. And I think, although we're seeing that kind of globally, I think it's really interesting when we consider Canada's position that so much focus is on, and there are so many students who choose to study. And I think it's great and it's really fascinating. So I thought that was really important that you raised. And I really want to come back to the piece later on about finding community in higher education, because you mentioned there were fellow students. And I think that's a really big piece of the experience and almost its own kind of very specific niche diaspora community. So we're going to come back to that point. But before we do, Azadeh, how has your experience been similar? What were the big kind of, yes, I have to go to Canada, I have to have this experience pieces? And how have they led you to where you are today doing the incredible things you're doing?
Thank you very much. Actually, the reason that we moved to Canada is because of education, but beside the education that we have the same level of the US, which is number one around the world, but the financial support that Canada give to the international students and domestic as well for the beginning. So when I came to Canada, I was international, but when I start my study, I was a permanent resident at that time. And I always had a financial support from university as a scholarship, but also student loan without no interest at all. And this is a very unique opportunity for me to study with a peace of mind, to not being worried about my financial cost while I'm doing my study in my master and PhD as well. And the research assistant situations or teaching assistant opportunity that university give to students, grad students, to support their finance was also very incredible. And the other things too that I really need to emphasize, that actually comparing the politic here in Canada compared with the US, Canadian are much more peaceful, and they do provide like a student visa and not that much struggle, that if you go outside the country to visit your parents, then you have a peace of mind that they will give you again visa. But my younger brother, I remember he moved to US and he couldn't come out of country for 7 years because at that time the president Trump said that if you go outside, there wouldn't be any guarantee for Iranian original people to even continue their study. That's why he was stuck for 7 years there, and he couldn't meet my parents as well. So that's why it's like Canada is much more nicer, and it's like Canadians, like they support international people and with no limits and no boundaries.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point in terms of how, or at least the perception and the acceptance of international students. I think many of Canada's universities are buoyed by the research of international students and their contributions, whether or not, and we'll again get into this later, people come to study and then return to their country of origin or maybe even immigrate somewhere else. I think as a community, as a society, we have a really high regard for scholarship in general, and maybe more so, and not to play us against the US too much, but I don't know that same assumption is always made, where we really value and we know how important it is that people choose to come to Canada to study, not just because of our multicultural society, but also just the perspectives they bring. Yeah, so thank you both for sharing a little bit more, kind of grounding us in the background of where you're coming from. I want to talk a little bit about what I mentioned in the beginning of today's episode, this concept of brain drain. So, brain drain, I think I heard the phrase for the first time a few years ago. And in today's context, we'll think about it as the trend or the pattern of immigration of highly trained or highly skilled, highly educated people from a particular country. So typically, or one of the most common examples I've heard of when people talk about brain drain is India. So lots of people leaving India for scholarship or who already possess multiple professional degrees and come to a country like Canada to for work opportunities or to start businesses. In both of your experiences in the countries you've lived in, regardless of whether they are kind of your home country, do you think brain drain impacts your homeland? Do you think it's happening? And have we seen a rise in recent years? And do you think it's something that's going to grow? Azadeh, I think we'll start with you here.
So if I assume that my home country is United Arab Emirates, that I grew up and my childhood is there, actually they won't give any permission to be officially Emiratis. So we are always, although that I lived there for 20 years. My parents lived there for 30 years. They were always non-Emirate people. And there is a very big difference between being a local domestic Emirates versus not. And in terms of education, they have like the country is very small, so limited education. They don't have for all majors until PhD. So it's like if foreign people wants to continue their education, they have to move to Europe, to US, North of America, or anywhere else. So that's one point that I can see that. But this is as a non-Emirate person that grown up in Dubai. But in Iran that I born, the scenario is a bit different, and the reason that people are coming out are the different opinions and different opportunities, but lots of them they want to live in a they want to continue because they are very intelligent. They want to continue and have the opportunity to living and study in the class one university worldwide. That's why like most of them go and study in United States. And then if by any chance, because they are Iranian and they couldn't enter because of visa or any other opportunity, then the second option would be Canada. And there is actually a big advantage studying in Canada versus US, beside the visa issue, that you can get much more earlier your citizenship and permanent residence to be local compared with the US, that my poor younger brother, for after 15 years he finally got his green card. So that's one main issue, or it's not an issue because people are eager to have a better life. They want to go and study to have a better and work with the top five larger countries or offices, companies. Why not? So it's always opportunity for need and want be more and better life.
Yeah, absolutely. Ifra, for you, does that resonate? If we think about Pakistan in your sense, have you noticed or have you experienced there being a brain drain of sorts? And what are some of your perspectives on that?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. For Pakistan, it's definitely like I would go like 120% that there is a brain drain happening. Just from around the 1970s to up to 2022, there was a record of about 6 million that have immigrated. Very highly skilled individuals from various job fields, from IT to doctors, nurses, and the list goes on. Just alone this year, I think at the start from January, up to 800,000 have immigrated to other places for just for job security, educational opportunities, just furthering themselves. And just like Azadeh mentioned, it's all about improving their living standard. But interestingly, when I come across the term brain drain, two words really stick to me: displacement and privilege. And the reason why is that for displacement, I see that in the sense and context for Pakistan, a country that is considered to be in the global south with a lot of developing conditions. A lot of people are displaced due to various factors. We have a corrupt regime in place, limited resources available. So people tend to sell their their land, and use all of the savings that they have to immigrate to places like Canada, Australia, or the US for education and career prospects. But then privilege is something that I also identify with brain drain, is when I see folks that travel from the UAE to study at institutes that are Ivy League institutes, maybe in the US, or places that quite honestly are really expensive. But given the opportunities they've had in the UAE, they're able to make a sizable amount of savings because there's no income tax there. So a lot of this is also interpreted in various contexts. Individually, each person has their own experience and story. But from what I've seen so far, lots of friends and families that have moved from the UAE to other places, they're able to have a comfortable lifestyle afterwards, even coming back, especially in a country like the UAE, or even other GCC countries, if you're educated from abroad, and specifically in a global north university, you do have a privilege, and you're able to attain a really good job with a high salary as compared to others that are equally qualified but may have graduated from mediocre universities, or universities that are, let's say, below different in terms of the scale or the list of standard that I forgot what it's called, Times Education, I think, and another one that scores up the universities. But definitely see that going on. Like, it's an ongoing thing that's been going on. In Canada now, for Canada, I've noticed quite a brain drain to US. During my research, as I was researching, a lot of people, especially those that are engineers or in the IT field, are moving to Silicon Valley and trying to get some better opportunities there based on the pay scale, as well as the tech industry is really booming in the US as compared to in Canada.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I don't think I'd thought about it in that way before. That's such a specific example of removing or the brain drain because of specific conditions. We don't have a comparable Silicon Valley. Nowhere else in the world does. So if you're looking to flourish in that environment, another one I know just anecdotally, law school. Like, there are lots of Canadians. I know I looked at it personally, studying abroad because of a lot of factors. Med school, I think, falls into a similar consideration that I would say Canada doesn't have the plethora of options that even like the States does. And it's so competitive, and it's incredibly expensive still. So I know that a lot of Canadians, young Canadians looking to do specific kind of vocational higher education, are maybe being part of a temporary brain drain, because I think the trend is still typical for those students to come back to Canada and practice, however difficult it can be, I think, to be accredited here then. And I wonder, and this is a question, and if either of you have insights, this would be really interesting, what the impact of online learning has had on the trend of brain drain. I know that like I was lucky enough to be out of university by the time the pandemic hit and online was really took full force. But I'd be really interested to explore more how that has made education more accessible. Because I think, Ifrah, you bring up a really interesting point when we think about this concept of brain drain, is that when people return, the level of privilege and maybe inequality that then comes into play with being educated from a different country. And as you said, maybe people are up against their peers, but because they went to the University of Toronto, that's considered, and that is a neutral fact, in my opinion, either way, right? Like they had that opportunity, but of course it makes their homeland labor market even more competitive. Have either of you had experience in what the difference in online learning has made to people? If I'm seeing you smile and nod.
No, I'm just nodding because a lot of it resonates. My last 2 years was the online when I was in doing my bachelor studies around 2020 and 2021. So that provided me, the opportunity to move back to the UAE just to live there for another 2 years. And I think that it really just changes the game from transnational education. You're able to access it. And if online studies continues, I think that the brain drain can certainly decline, because individuals would then just attain their education online and then can pursue their career prospects in their surrounding area. That being said, though, if the surrounding area does have the opportunities, which is another level of difficulty.
So in my case, during pandemic, I already finished all my courses. So I did not do an online course, but in 2013, actually, I started learning about machine learning that one prof, uh, one course from Coursera from Stanford to learn AI, and then another one from University of Toronto. So in 2013 I started learning about machine learning, and I used that for my thesis and then for my company as well. So that was a very game changer for me. And then at the same time I was hired a tutor abroad to teach me more in terms of codes and those things. So I already in 2013 start living and study at home. So my pandemic actually started in 2013, much more earlier in the reality, and I had everything online. But beside those, that the people who need education to implement it is very different than nowadays, that having a certification with the prestige number 1 to 10 university to find a career and find a better job is different. And sometimes more in business now, beside the university and education, it's more about the network that you can establish on those universities. So even me, that I have a Canadian passport for more than, I don't know, 15 years, I still say that after I finish this task and that task in my life, I'm gonna go and move to Boston, because first, Boston is number one for medical device. Second, I'm gonna start doing an MBA at Harvard, because that's a game changer for me. And this is what you can see, that even if I want to come back and work here in Canada, that it has a lots of taxes that makes people run away and go to US. Beside that one, is like, if I have in my resume Harvard MBA, would be really different compared with the top two, which is McGill and Toronto. So this is unfortunate, but this is a hard fact.
Absolutely, it is. And I think one of the things I remember learning back when I was in high school applying to universities was that technically across the board in Canada, we don't rank our universities, but there is an assumed rank, right? Most people would put your U of T, your McGill up there, and then so on and so forth. But I think technically we don't. But I think it is such an important point in how those assumptions or the reputations of centers of education are then kind of ranked in within society, and what that impact has. So I think that's a really valid point. Switching gears a little bit, I want to come back to something, Ifrah, you mentioned earlier, which was kind of diaspora communities within higher education. typically commonly when we're talking about the notion of diaspora in its traditional sense, which the original definition implies loss of homeland, there's implied suffering, mass violence, et cetera. But that definition has changed and adapted significantly, even decade by decade, over the last 50 years, I would say. And especially, I think, when we talk about brain drain or coming to a different country for education, there's a much more positive notion there. And higher educations can now be viewed as an important site for the formation and cultivation of new diaspora communities. So for both of you, in your experiences studying, whether it's online or on campus and in your higher education, did you form a community that was impacted by your diaspora? If I'm going to start with you, because I think you kind of alluded to this previously, so I'd love to hear more about that experience and how it changed over time. Did you have different communities? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when you mentioned that the definition of diaspora has changed over time. I think that's something that I would resonate as well, being in various groups of diasporas and identifying. And when I say various, I mean there are groups such as individuals like myself that have grew up in the UAE, but yet we don't have some sort of legal binding document to that country where we can say we're from there. We've just lived there. We've had lived experiences, but we can't really call ourselves a national, even though we've lived several years there. So being in that sort of temporary legal lingo status of a resident, yeah, I believe that's the terminology that's being used if you have a resident permit. So I guess I'll start off with my experience in the university. When I was there, I did join a group of the Pakistani Student Association, really a vibrant community, a lot of folks and friends that I've met, and really touched the culture and the different aspects of it and the events. But at the same time, I did feel a bit not included because I'm someone that didn't really grow up in Pakistan. I was just born there. So I don't really have a strong connection to the homeland, given that I grew up in a different place and then immigrated to Canada. So that group was, while it was fun, it just wasn't my thing because I couldn't resonate deeply. I then moved on to a group of individuals. So it's a group called the International Canadian Student Network. It was a really good group in the sense that we had lots of international students from various backgrounds. So it's a multicultural society. So you can really find individuals from various backgrounds, and that would sort of more resonated with me as opposed to sticking to a single diasporic group, I would say, based on one country. So I think that my experience has so far been shaped in terms of transitioning, looking for someone that's from my ethnic background to maybe someone who shared similar life experiences with me. So individuals that grew up at the UAE or grew up in more than one country or moved around in different places, that really kind of struck to me because every time we would laugh about the question, where are you from? Well, I don't look like a certain, sort of nationality based. So it's always like, are they trying to know based on my appearance, or is it maybe based on the document I'm holding? That I hold, basically a Canadian passport, or is it because maybe of my accent, where I've lived, or so it's the list goes on in terms of like how to answer that question. And I think that's really what struck to me, like connecting with people that were in a similar sort of situation, I would say, but in a way kind of moving around and calling ourselves global citizens, if that term can be used. So I think it's really about like the experiences that so far I've had, but I will then let it. I would love to hear Azadeh's thoughts as well, if there are any similarities.
Exactly. It's very, very tough that although that we spend half of our life, we don't have any national legal documents that we are from Emirates. And unfortunately, because of politics, I hate politics. You can't believe that. Between Iran and Emirates, Iranian are no longer welcome to be in Emirate at all, at all. and lots of people who even they born there and grown up there, but their parents' nationality were Iranian, they never get a passport as an Emirati. And then I heard that they, because of the religious sector difference that they have it, they both Muslim, but then they kick them out to Iran. And that's a very petite, but this is all about politics, and we have no, I don't know, no, nothing to do it. We can't do anything at all. But I had a very similarity that even like I were like them. I used to speak Arabic very well. For me, I went to the, what do you call, all the schools and university bachelor with a group of same people, because we had a very long school from grade 1 to high school and then college and university. So we have a bunch of very besties from age 7 that we go to the same school until graduated from bachelor, even same university and same major. And then half of them emigrate to Canada for better continue education and better increase the quality of the life before even graduated completely. So that's how I understand that. Okay, then I have to go back to Canada to have my team back. And that's one of the reasons that like primary school, secondary school, high school, college, university, I always have all my team, like our group, which is might born in Iran, might not, but grown up in Dubai, and we were very close because we were like 30 people, same and same family culture. But Iranian who grew up in outside Iran has a very very different culture compared with the Iranian who grew up in Iran. And when I married to my husband who grew up in Iran, his family was very fine. But when we start having a friend and family Iranian here in Canada, then I find that, oh gosh, we have a very different culture. Like we couple were very awkward in terms of religious Iranian and non-religious Iranian community. So we were not really, really welcome in a both Iranian, whether they are religious, that they have their own community, and non-religious, that they have their own community, and we were not welcome in both. And that's a bit of scenario and still there. But me personally, I'm a very, because I grew up in a very international communities like Dubai. I used to speak Hindu, Arabic, English, Farsi, Urdu a bit, because like our neighbors, our friends, they are from the Filipinos. So it's like we grown up there and we were able to speak like a 7 language, and we were used to lots of different cultures. But in here, like my best friends are Iranian who grew up outside the Iran, like they grew up here, whether they born here or they born in Iran and grew up here. So I work like having the best. But mostly when I start my startup, then I have like a community and ecosystem of startups, do the networking and those. And now that I'm expanding my family, which I have my mom living with us, as well as one kiddo that I have, my daughter. So I spend my personal life mostly with my family, but beside that, I'm with the startup ecosystem very involved, and I find them as my family. So like my coach here at District 3, she's my mom, another mom. Like, and I go when I go to the Concordia incubator, that's my second home. I was like, yes, I'm home. So that's the family and community that I have, and I love it here in Montreal.
So it's really what I'm hearing from you both that resonates deeply with me as well as an individual is the finding community based on lived experience. So there's particular niches or uniquenesses to both of your experiences, and you've found community in people who can validate those and who share those same experiences as well. So for you, I think shared something that resonates deeply with me. For context, my parents are British. I grew up in the UK, and we moved here and then moved back and then moved back here. So I had it kind of all the ways. And then I moved later in life to Germany and lived amongst Canadians and British fellow peers. And I felt like I was not a part of any of those three groups. I was not Canadian, I was not British, I was not German for sure. So I really resonate, and I really love hearing from the both of you that that's a shared experience. And I also found my community in people who cannot answer the question of where are you from, like what is home, because there is, I think, a community of people who just hear that question and go like, I mean, it's very complicated. Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight that I think really the takeaway from that piece of conversation today is that your community can be influenced maybe by those diaspora ties. So it's lovely to have people who can share the same culture, who want to eat the same food or connect on some of those pieces. But really, that lived experience is probably the connector that brings us all together more than anything. Yeah. So thank you both for sharing a little bit more kind of anecdotally. Building off of that question, moving away a little bit from the education piece, I'd love to hear from the both of you how you maintain ties, how you cultivate ties to the countries that you've lived in and the cultures that you've been around and have experienced. I know one way that I love to do that is through food. I've talked about it a lot on this podcast. I love food, and I love how food grounds us in different diaspora communities. Azadeh, for you, what are some, whether it be Iran, whether it be the UAE, like what are the cultural markers that you keep in your life today to keep you connected to those communities?
That's a really hard question. I need more time to think about it. So there are a couple of like cultural celebrations that I really love, like Nowruz, which is our Persian New Year. And the main reason that I love it because of the sweets that we have and eat for 13 days. Can you believe that? And the flowers. And that's what I love. But about some cultures, because actually my mom and my parents, they grown up in in US, but then they moved to Iran. So my elder brother born in US, and our scenario is a bit complicated, but yeah, they moved to Iran for 10 years, then they went out to Iran, then they come to Dubai for 20-30 years. So it was like my dad always want to keep a root with Iran. That's why he said that I want you to talk Farsi at home and go to Iranian school and like try to push us to read different Iranian poem and stories, Iranian stories and legend at sleeping time. So we are very familiar with those cultures. But to be honest with you, at the same time, when we were grown up in Dubai, it was like a Walt Disney all the time. So it's like that's why I say that like as a Iranian grown up outside Iran, it's a bit complications that even some of the Muslim religious people, they say that you have an awkward religious version of Islam's, like yes, like a bit of Walt Disney in it. So that's a bit different, but food is good, but I'm not really fan of food. So I really didn't like all the Iranian food a bit. Like but snack food in small pieces, but more I'm more curious. I love adventures, so I love more new food, new cultures, and that's why it's like new things make me much more happier and satisfied and excitement. So that's why it's like, okay, let's go to figure out the Chinese culture and then Chinese food, and Japanese culture, Japanese, Pakistani food and Pakistan. So everything about to be more international. But in terms of Iran, my dad used to send us to Iran to be more connected when we were at school in summer, because in Dubai the degree is 60 in Celsius, so it's like a burning, and in Iran it was more normal, like a 30ish. So I spent my summer childhood with my grandparents, with our uncles, aunties, and all the great stories that we were there. But not really something's really specific that I can say that this is what I love about it. But and I'm not that person's that be say that this is our, or like, pure culture, or I always see everything as a more international and humanities. So I can't really say that I love their art. I love their poems. I don't like really their legend stories. It's kind of awkward for me. But when people are all nice, they are good, but they are not nice all the time. So, but it's not about Iranian. It's a general about the humanities. So I can't say anything in, like, especially. And for Emirates, it's all about the cartoons that I used to see my siblings, and actually food snacks that we used to eat after school together with my siblings. And actually one of them find one special chips Oman that's spicy in the US, in DC, and I beg him to buy a very large amount, and he's bringing me for this Christmas all the Emirates snacks from there.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only person who gravitates to any kind of snacks. Every time I see my mom, she's always been to the Scottish and Irish store, and she's always bringing me like imported Heinz baked beans. And friends of mine laugh because they're like, you can just get a similar thing here. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's that the nostalgia that's associated. It's all of it. So I'm glad it's not just me who, like, for me the markers of that history and that childhood is somehow always rooted in food. Like, it's always food. When I think of a good memory that's maybe has a cultural association, it's always food. And Azadeh, I think what you've touched on in that is that you are that global citizen, right? You love to kind of pick and choose from the menu that is the global world, and what, be it food or kind of experiences. And I think that is something that's lovely about the experience of living in Canada, is that we are afforded the opportunity to do that in some part and experience lots of different cultures, especially through food. So that resonated big time with me. Ifrah, for you, are there things about your childhood and kind of growing up in between different cultures and with a mix of those that you maintain kind of in your life today? Or have you taken on new pieces that you would say form part of your identity now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can certainly resonate a bit from Azadeh when you mentioned Disneyland. It's definitely a magical world, the UAE. Like, don't get me wrong, despite that they have limited naturalization, it is a wonderful place. Tons of opportunities in terms of adventures, different cuisines. There's always some sort of festival that's going on out of nowhere, and it's a place that honestly pushes you beyond your boundaries and really kind of makes you a risk taker in the sense that you're open to new activities, new ideas. Innovation is such a big thing there that it's every time it's something new. Is every time I visit, it's like a new attraction is always there. So I think for me, what resonates is really the idea of being sort of open minded, but more as well as taking the risks and kind of jumping out of my comfort zone. I think that's something that really shaped my identity living in the UAE, given that it's such a multicultural, diverse place with so many people from various backgrounds, and a small country, but is definitely moving in the right steps in terms of innovation, development, and all the crazy stuff that's going on in terms of their projects and everything. So the list really goes on. But another thing that really kind of sticks to me is definitely snacks. Growing up there, when you mentioned these spicy Omani chips, oh my goodness, like I would love to have one right now. They're really good. So it's really those childhood memories, the snacks, the food, the liveliness, the vibrant city, how late at night, even around 9 p.m., the lights are still on, and it's not very quiet or depressing in that sense. So I think like it's really about those memories and then how it's shaped me. For Pakistan, now that's a place that I visited often when I used to live in the UAE. So I think a lot what I've taken from there to connect to my homeland is the moral values, the importance of family. Having been living here in Canada, I notice it's a very individualistic society as opposed to other places. So the importance of having people around you or being able to socialize and have that work-life balance. I struggle to see that here. A lot of workaholics from class colleagues and people that I've worked with. It's crazy that I see them online sometimes at 11 p.m. So it's definitely a different world, and I think the balance and like not having that sort of sticking to one polarized side, that's something that really resonates and connects me back to home. Because people there take it easy in the sense that it's just something you can easily after work go to a cafe and relax and talk about your day. Like it's a very different experience. Which hopefully I hope to experience that maybe here, as opposed to the crazy hours and very polarized society in the sense that you find someone who's a workaholic, but then you find someone at the other end as well. So I think striking that balance is something that's really shaped me as in terms of my identity, as well as the different values and importance of family that I've sort of learned and seen growing up in the UAE as well as visiting Pakistan.
One thing that I want to say that for the nostalgia, actually, it's a snack compared with the food, because food is not that much important for me, but nostalgic music that we used to hear it, and cartoons and movies, and also old friends from school. Like I have a couple of them that they, although that they were not my besties, but we were there for 12 years together, and still, if they have a lot of relevant here in Canada, and if she come to Ottawa, she called me and I drive 2 hours to visit her, and hug her is like a world for me. And like hugging the old friends and families is the biggest gift in the world that I can say.
Yeah, and it's something that you only get to experience on that level if you've left your homeland or you've left your home community, right? And then you realize when you're affronted with that experience, like how much you've changed, how much everything has changed. I have always found that a really powerful moment. And for your comments about like community and that not necessarily being such a value in Canada, I think that's so interesting. And I'm so interested to see as a society, which is only, I hope, going to continue trending to be increasingly multicultural and diverse. I would love, selfishly, to have a better grasp on what community means in Canada, right? I think you're completely correct that we just don't have that like cafe culture. We don't have, the real, whether it be like found family or relatives, we just don't have maybe the same level in a general sense of commitment to that or in how it balances work. I think that's such a good point. So I'm so interested in the next 10, 20, 30 years how that value maybe will infiltrate its way into Canadian society, as well as others. I think that's one of the main things that excites me about living in a multicultural country is not just the things that come immediately, like the food and language and music, but the value systems that change over time, and how we get to blend them together into something that works for all of us. So fingers crossed, people won't be working at 11 p.m. because I definitely know people who do that too. My last question for you both, and this one's pretty open-ended, so take it where you feel it makes most sense. If you were to meet someone tomorrow that that was from one of your home countries or a homeland, who was considering coming to Canada or emigrating anywhere for better opportunities, Is there a piece of advice that you'd give them? Is there a memory or an experience that you would share with them? How would you prepare someone to make that decision? Because it is quite a weighty decision to make. Ifrah, I think we'll start with you, and then Azadeh we'll finish with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting question because in my line of work, we often see lots of folks that are coming to Canada for various reasons. So I think one piece of advice I would give them is really do what makes you happy, not what's there. In the sense that if you're going to be happy and if you're able to live in Canada, knowing that it would be different, the journey would be difficult getting to where you would like to be, as well as the different cultural aspects. If you're able to overcome that, then yes, do come to Canada, because it certainly is a different place in terms of various perspectives from where you're coming from. And I say this because a lots of family friends that I've seen that have moved here, some successfully have integrated to the Canadian society and their community, whereas others have unfortunately decided to move back to the Middle East or even to Pakistan after graduating from the university. And even though they're getting a nice job, it's just the community, so they don't really resonate well. So they prefer to maybe go and live in a place where, like you mentioned, Jen, about a cafe environment or somewhere where you're able to connect easily and see the value in people. So that's something that I've really have seen, like a big difference from the places I've lived in Canada. So the advice I would give is, if you can overcome that and try to find that maybe in different ways in Canada, then certainly do move. It's a great place with a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, and I usually, it doesn't matter from which city and country they want to move here in Canada as immigration. The main reason I always ask them why you want to immigrate. What is your purpose? First, what is your purpose of life? Do you want to have a better life? Let's define the better life, because in some cases you can see the people that in Dubai, my gosh, it's a luxury life that I had, and it's a luxury like you cannot imagine what I'm talking when I'm saying luxury. And when I came here, I start cry and cry, because the main reason I got married and came here was like, why? It's like a very small town, and it's like compare with the what the like Emirates mall. I compare these malls, like you don't have anything. Why? And then I keep telling my husbands, like, even animals, when they want to emigrate, they come from cold weather, goes back to hot weather. But we were used to hot weather in Emirates, and then we came to the cold weather. Why and why? But the value that education in here gave me, then my life changed through my entrepreneurships. it, this is exactly the life that I want, and I couldn't make it. If I want to repeat it, I will do it again here, because I don't know if I do it another way, another country, what would be happened. So I'm very happy about the quality of life, the peace of mind, the different supports that I receive here in Canada, as an education, as a human, as a society. So this is very, very important. But I see lots of people coming out from not Emirates. I don't see lots of Emiratian to come out, because they have the whole world for them. But non-Emiratian and Iranian, let's say, lots of Iranians immigrate here nowadays, and they are not like a super smart, but whatever, they sell it in Iran and come here for better life. But in lots of cases, you can see that they used to have much more better life, quality of life in Iran, and they immigrate here because of lots of, to be honest with you, is like news is, they are not satisfied. But if you go and mentally go deep down why they are not satisfied, it's because of the lots of reasons, family, friends, environment, country, politics, and more and more and more. But to be honest with you, if anyone asks me, I say 2, 3 things beside the philosophy of immigration. Why do you want to immigrate? 2 things. Can you handle a very cold weather for 6 months? If not, don't come, because you're going to get the depression. And that's a serious thing. Then you are going to stop studying and you are going to have anxiety for your whole life as a trauma. And then the second thing, are you used to be alone and you're not afraid of, like a strong person? Because lots of them have a very close attachment with their family and friends. And when they come, they receive a shock. They don't know how to handle those shocks. They got a depression, and lots of bad things happened after and after. So these two are very important. Very cold weather. I grew up in a very hot weather, and I complained only first year, and then the rest was like, beside the very cold weather, whatever I'm getting, very happy, and then stop claiming about the winter anymore. And this is Canada, whether I want it or not. If I'm not, bye bye. You're free to go. No one's like ask you to stay. So it's a very free country. And so I stop and enjoy winter and try to handle it. But they need to be aware of 7 months very cold. This year we didn't have sun at all, almost no sun as well, which is very high depression there. That's why I hide my light trappy all the time. But these are the very two important things, and mental health they need to be aware of if they feel a depression, anxiety, how to handle it, because that's a game changer for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. I think, again, hearing you both, there's some themes here in terms of it is a very individualistic society. That's typically how Canadian society is developed. So that culture shock that you may have in leaving behind, your community is sometimes compounded with the fact that you're not going to be able to replicate that community here immediately. It's going to, as you said, Ifrah, take time to overcome, to find your people, to develop that. And even then, you're not necessarily going to have the same exact community, right? Everyone is going to come with their own lived experience. And I think that, as you've both said, is one of the biggest things that, yes, on one hand, you've got incredible opportunities, which will also take an incredible amount of work. And you're going to set yourself up for maybe this life that you'd hope for. But it is an entirely different way of living and way of being. So finding your community within that, there's something to be said for that. Well, that was my last question. Thank you both so much for today's conversation. I'm so glad we touched on the theme of education, but also a little bit more in terms of finding community and what that means to the both of you, and how your own lived experiences, your own unique identities have kind of impacted your experience. So thank you both for being on Dispersion today. It's been a pleasure. And as always, thank you for sharing your personal experiences and your ideas. It's been amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for having us, Jen.
Absolutely. Today. Thanks so much. It was a really great conversation.
Wow, thank you for listening to this episode of Dispersion. If you'd like to learn more about diaspora studies or about the Zoryan Institute's other projects and programs, visit our website at www.zoryaninstitute.org. That's ZORYAN, and find us across your favorite social media platforms at Zoryan Institute. Next time on Dispersion, we'll be talking to 2 brand new guests who share with us their unique diaspora experiences, and will introduce you to a new concept within diaspora studies. Find Dispersion on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening.